Sumter, you know, he wasn't the guy out on the guard post or whatever that didn't do a good job of letting people know that the British were coming. If you've been in the military more than 15 minutes, one of the things you do realize is the commander is responsible for everything that their unit does or fails to do. Other than late in the war, I don't think that we can say that when Marion was present that you had any problems with his unit being surprised anytime, any place. Okay, but going back to the original premise, was Marion this runner about Sumter's command? Yes, he was. But do I think that that affected how he responded in that situation? I do not. Okay, Marion dispersed his brigade to keep from having to serve under Sumter. Negative. Hey, it was typical tactics for partisans to be able to disperse in the face of the enemy. I don't think that was a factor at all. And when you say that he had very few troops, he had very few troops from the beginning based on his letter to Isaac Hugie. And when you talk about that he is trying to move in the face of the enemy and then bring troops in at the same time, hey, very tough situation. However, I do not think that he did this so he couldn't serve with Sumter. Use the numbers and enemy strength as excuses. Again, even Lord Rawdon says that he was in position to keep Marion from going to Sumter's assistance. So, you know, you usually cannot coerce your enemy into saying something to support you, particularly when you got nothing to coerce him with. Marion deliberately moved slowly. Well, I don't know. He seems to have moved about 120 miles over the period of several days, all in response to the messages. And Marion failed to respond to Sumter and communicate in a timely way. I think that we have seen from the communication that there were multiple letters, at least 2 letters from Marion who we have not been able to find. I know if it was capable of being found, Dave would have already found it. Right, Dave?
That's right.
Okay. So, if you look at all of these things, hey, in my mind's eye, I think that reluctant swamp fox, no way. I think that Marion was doing exactly what he thought he could do. What I do blame in all this is probably something that also Baron Clausewitz called the fog of war. Okay, failure to meet, was it deliberate? No, it was just a cause of a number of factors. Sometimes in modern day we call it Murphy. Murphy's alive and well. And he was definitely there during the Rounds campaign. The whole time, distance, enemy in between, you know, all those things impacted the flow of messages back and forth. Hey, I'm here to tell you, if you had a couple of cell phones back then, how history could have changed. Okay? Again, Marion Crosby did move to 120 miles. You know, I think Marion was, again, like I said, trying to cross at Murray's Ferry to go back and meet up with Sumter. I think that what happened was once he found out about Watson, hey, he wasn't worried about Sumter anymore. He focused on going after Watson in what became the Bridges campaign, and during that time, Marion changed his focus from one of partisan warfare to one of a more structured type warfare, with Waibu Swamp, Mount Hope Swamp, Lower Bridge, and Sandpit River that marked a demarcation from the way he had done battle before, and also a demarcation because I think Lord Rawdon in the Bridges campaign thought that Marion would stick to his guns and that he would probably fall back away from that force of Watson and go back towards his home base over at Snow's Island, where he was going to send Doyle. And so yes, the Rounds campaign set up the Bridges campaign. And with that, I'll be glad to entertain any questions. Sir?
Would you say that Marion's information intelligence was better than Sumter's?
You say was Marion's intelligence better than Sumter's?
Yes.
I do know that Marion had a very well-defined intelligence network. You know, one of the problems that he had about the Bridges campaign, during the Bridges campaign time, was that he had to pull in a lot of those guys. The reason being that he didn't have enough troops. So I think that that probably hurt his intelligence a little bit around the Bridges campaign time frame. Better than Sumter's, it's hard to say. I've not done a lot of research that specifically address that area. My gut would tell me yes. Sir.
At this point, Marion is bringing his troops together, probably still on the move. How many men are we talking about?
Before, when he was talking to the Hughie, he talked about less than 200. We do know that at the beginning of the Bridges campaign, somewhere around Court and Plantation, he had gathered a force of about 500. So I think that that was bringing folks with him as he was on the march, and I think probably sending word out, hey, I'm headed towards Courts or wherever, and just getting these folks to filter in and slowly build up his force.
Thank you.
Eric.
Seeing that this has been a following frictional war and is a war of maneuvers, is there any evidence that any of these messages were intercepted, that they seem to be tracking each other, that could also be one of those contributing factors of why they may not arrive in time? But it just seems that the likelihood that all the messengers always got through every single time really could be lucky, especially down here in the South. So I'm just wondering, is there any evidence to show that the British intercept any of these messages and were able to interpret where to move and thus counter-move to keep both Sumter moving and keep Marion moving?
You know, I've not seen direct evidence. Now, for instance, yeah, I know when I was doing my work on the Bridges campaign, there was a letter from Lord Rawdon to Watson that was captured that we actually finally did after 239 years. We actually got it deciphered to see what he said. It wasn't a smoking gun saying, I want you to do this or that. But what we did discover was, yeah, people intercepted messages all the time. That's why, you know, when I look at the fact that Lord Rawdon said Sumter had ordered Marion to go to Manigos, I think that was from an intercepted message. You know, now that's just inference on my part, but it makes sense. And I think that's what influenced some of the movements between Watson and Rawdon. Oh, by the way, that letter that Rawdon sent, there was no smoking gun message from Rawdon to Watson or Doyle saying, I want you to do this against Marion. But what we do have is we have Watson was operating in the same area as Rawdon during that time. And I personally think that Rawdon and Rawdon and Watson had a face-to-face meeting where they discussed what they wanted to do during that campaign. Anybody else? Yes, David.
It just keeps wondering in my mind that Sumter and his crew passed Marion's crew the same night, and this is like, I don't know, 10 years now, but I keep thinking about this. These guys supposedly have